Tale of the Trader and the Jinni. It is related, O auspicious king, that there was a merchant of the merchants who had much wealth and business in various cities. Now on a day he mounted horse and went forth to recover monies in certain towns, and the heat sore oppressed him. So he sat beneath a tree and, putting his hand into his saddlebags, took then some broken bread and dried dates and began to break his fast. When he had ended eating the dates, he threw away the stone with force, and lo, an Ifrit appeared, huge of stature and brandishing a drawn sword, wherewith he approached the merchant and said, "Stand up, that I may slay you, even as you slew my son." Asked the merchant, "How have I slain your son?" And he answered, "When you ate his dates and threw away the stone, they struck my son full in the breast as he was walking by, so that he died forthwith." Quoth the merchant, "Verily from Allah we proceeded, and unto Allah are we returning. There is no majesty and there is no might save in Allah, the glorious, the great. If I slew your son, I slew him by chance madly. I pray you now pardon me." Rejoined the Jinni, "There is no help but I must slay you." Then he seized him and dragged him along, and casting him to the earth, raised the sword to strike him, whereupon the merchant wept and said, "I commit my case to Allah," and began repeating these couplets. Contained time a twain of days, this of blessing that pain, and her that life a twain of health, this of pleasure that of pain. Sees not when blows the hurricane, sweeping stark and striking strong. None save the forest giant feels the suffering of the strain. How many trees earth nourished of the dry and of the green, yet none but those which bear the fruits forecast of stone complain. Sees not how corpses rise and float the surface of the tide, while pearls, O prize, lie hidden in the deepest of the main. In heaven are unnumbered the many of the stars, yet near a star but sun and moon by eclipse is overtaken. Where judge you the days that saw your faring son and well, and counted not the pangs and pain whereof fate is ever vain. The nights have kept you safe, and the safety brought you pride, but bliss and blessings of the night are genders of pain. When the merchant ceased repeating his verse, the Jinni said to him, "Cut your words short, by Allah. Needs must I slay you?" But the merchant spake him thus, "Know, O you Ifrit, that I have debts due to me and much wealth and children and a wife and many pledges in hand. So permit me to go home and discharge to every claimant his claim, and I will come back to you at the head of the new year. Allah be my testimony and surety that I will return to you, and then you may do with me as you will, and Allah is witness to what I say." The Jinni took sure promise of him and let him go. So he returned to his own city and transacted the business and rendered to all men their dues. And after informing his wife and children of what had betided him, he appointed a guardian and dwelt with them for a full year. Then he arose and made the wuzu ablution to purify himself before death, and took his root under his arm and bid farewell to his people, his neighbors, and all his kith and kin, and went forth despite his own nose. They then began weeping and wailing and beating their breasts over him, but he travelled until he arrived at the same garden, and the day of his arrival was the head of the new year. As he sat weeping over what had befallen him, behold, a Shaykh, a very ancient man, drew near leading a chained gazelle, and he saluted that merchant and wishing him long life, said, "What is the cause of your sitting in this place and you alone in this be a resort of evil spirits?" The merchant related to him what had come to pass with the Ifrit and the old man. The owner of the gazelle wondered and said, "By Allah, O brother, your fate is none other than exceeding fate, and your story right strange. Were it graven with gravers on the eye corners, it were a warner to whoso would be warned." Then seating himself near the merchant, he said, "By Allah, O my brother, I will not leave you until I see what may come to pass with you and this Ifrit." And presently as he said, and the two were at talk, the merchant began to feel fear and terror, and exceeding grief and sorrow beyond relief, and ever-growing care and extreme despair. And the owner of the gazelle was hurt by his side, when behold, a second Shaykh approached them, and with him were two dogs, both of greyhound breed and both black. The second old man, after saluting them with the salam, also asked them of their tidings and said, "What caused you to sit in this place, a dwelling of the Jinn?" So he told him the tale from beginning to end, and their stay there had not lasted long before there came up a third Shaykh, and with him a simul of bright bay coat, and he saluted them and asked them why they were seated in that place. So they told him the story from first to last, and of no avail, O my master, is a twice told tale. There he sat down with them, and lo, a dust cloud advanced, and a mighty sand devil appeared midmost of the waste. Presently the cloud opened, and behold, within it was that Jinni, handing in hand a drawn sword. While his eyes were shooting fire sparks of rage, he came up to them and, hailing away the merchant from among them, cried to him, "Arise, that I may slew you, as you slit my son, the life staves of my liver." The merchant wailed and wept, and the three old men began sighing and crying and weeping and wailing with their companion. Presently the first old man, the owner of the gazelle, came out from among them and kissed the hand of the Ifrit and said, "O Jinni, you crown of the kings of the Jinn, were I to tell you the story of me and this gazelle, and you should consider it wondrous. Would you give me a third part of this merchant's blood? Then quoth the Jinni, Even so, O Shaykh, if you tell me this tale, and I hold it marvelous, then will I give you a third of his blood. Thereupon the old man began to tell the first Shaykh story. Know, O Jinni, that this Ghazil is the daughter of my paternal uncle, my own flesh and blood, and I married her when she was a young maid, and I lived with her well-nigh 30 years. Yet was I not blessed with issue by her, so I took me a concubine, who brought to me a boon of a male child fair as the full moon, with eyes of lovely shine and eyebrows which formed one line, and limbs of perfect design. Little by little he grew in stature and waxed tall. And when he was a lad 15 years old, it became needful I should journey to certain cities, and I travelled with great store of goods. But the daughter of my uncle, this Ghazil, had learned grammar and egromancy and clergy craft from her childhood, so he bewitched that son of mine to a calf, and my handmaid, his mother, to a heifer, and made them offer the headsman's care. Now, when I returned after a long time from my journey, and asked for my son and his mother, she answered me, saying, Your slave girl is dead, and your son had fled, and I know not whither he is sped. So I remained for a whole year with grieving heart and streaming eyes until the time came for the great festival of Allah. Then sent I to my herdsman, bidding him choose for me a fat heifer, and he brought me one which was the damsel, my handmaid, whom this Ghazil had ensorcelled. I tucked up my sleeves and skirt, and taking a knife, proceeded to cut her throat, but she laughed aloud and wept bitter tears. Thereat I marveled, and pity seized me. I held my hand, saying to the herd, Bring me other than this. Then cried my cousin, Slay her, for I have not a fatter nor a fairer. Once more I went forward to sacrifice her, but she again laughed aloud, upon which in wrath I refrained and commanded the headsman to slay her and flay her. He killed her and skinned her, but found in her neither fat nor flesh, only hide and bone, and I repented when penitence availed me naught. I gave her to herdsman and said to him, Fetch me a fat calf. So he brought my son and herself. When the calf saw me, he brake his tether and ran to me, found upon me, and wailed and shed tears, so that I took pity on him, and said to the headsman, Bring me a heifer and let this calf go. Thereupon my cousin, this Ghazil, called aloud at me, saying, Needs must you kill this calf? This is a holy day and a blessed, whereon not is slain save what be perfect pure, and we have not amongst our calves any fatter or fairer than this. Quoth I, Look you upon the condition of the heifer which I slaughtered at your bidding, and how we turned from her in disappointment, and she profited us on no wise. And I repent with an exceeding repentance of having killed her. So this time I will not obey your bidding for the sacrifice of this calf. Quoth she, by Allah, the most great, the compassionate, there is no help for it. You must kill him on his holy day. And if you kill him not to me, you are no man, and I to you am no wife. Now, when I heard those hard words, not knowing her object, I went up to the calf, knife in hand, and Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day and ceased to say her permitted say. Then quoth her sister to her, how fair is your tale, and how grateful, and how sweet, and how tasteful. And Shahrazad answered her, what is this to that I could tell you on the coming night, were I to live, and the king would spare me? Then said the king in himself, by Allah, I will not slay her until I shall have heard the rest of her tale. So they slept the rest of that night in mutual embrace till day fully break. Then the king went forth to his audience hall, and the wazir went up with his daughter, sword under his arm. The king issued his orders and promoted this and deposed that until the end of the day, and he told the wazir no whit of what had happened. But the minister wondered thereat with exceeding wonder. And when the court broke up, King Shahryar entered his palace. When it was the second night, said Dunyazad to her sister Shahrazad, O my sister, finish for us that story of the merchant and the Jinni. And she answered, with joy and goodly agree, if the king permit me. Then quoth the king, tell your tale. And Shahrazad began in these words, it hath reached me, O auspicious king, and heaven directed ruler, that when the merchant purposed the sacrifice of the calf, but saw it weeping, his heart relented, and he said to the herdsman, keep the calf among my cattle. All this the old Shaykh told the Jinni, who marveled much of these strange words. Then the owner of the Gazir continued, O Lord of the kings of the Jinn, this much took place, and my uncle's daughter, this Gazir, looked on and saw it, and said, butcher me this calf, for surely it is a fat one. But I bade the herdsman take it away, and he took it and turned his face homewards. On the next day, as I was sitting in my own house, lo, the herdsman came and, standing before me, said, O my master, I will tell you a thing which shall gladden your soul, and shall gain me the gift of good tidings. I answered, even so. Then said he, O merchant, I have a daughter, and she learned magic in her childhood from an old woman who lived with us. Yesterday, when you gave me the calf, I went into the house to her, and she looked upon it and filled her face. Then she wept and laughed. alternately, and at last she said, O my father, hath mine honor become so cheap to you that you bring into me strong men? I asked her, Where be these strong men, and why was you laughing and crying? And she answered, Of a truth this calf which is with you is the son of our master, the merchant, but he is encircled by his stepdame who bewitched both him and his mother. Such is the cause of my longing. Now the reason of his weeping is his mother, for that his father slew her unawares. Then I marveled at this with exceeding marvel and hardly made sure that they had done before I came to tell you. When I heard, O Jinni, my herdsman's word, I went out with him, and I was drunken with that wine, from the excess of joy and gladness which came upon me, until I reached his house. There his doctor welcomed me, and kissed my hand, and forthwith the calf came and fawned upon me as before. Quoth I to the headsman's doctor, Is this true that you say of this calf? Quoth she, Yea, O my master, he is your son, the very core of your heart. I rejoiced and said to her, O maiden, if you will release him, yours shall be whatever cattle and property of mine are under your father's hand. She smiled and answered, O my master, I have no greed for the goods, nor will I take them save on two conditions. The first, that you marry me to your son, and the second, that I may bewitch her who bewitched him and imprison her. Otherwise, I cannot be saved from her malice and malpractices. Now, when I heard, O Jinni, the words of the headsman's doctor, I replied, Besides what you asked, all the cattle and the household stuff in your father's charge are yours, and as for the daughter of my uncle, her blood is lawful to you. When I had spoken, she took a cup and filled it with water. Then she recited a spell over it and sprinkled it upon the calf, saying, If Almighty Allah created you a calf, remain so shaped and change not, but if you be ancient, return to your whilom form, by command of our Most Highest. And lo, he trembled and became a man. Then I fell on his neck and said, Allah upon you, tell me all that the daughter of my uncle did by you and by your mother. And when he told me that had come to pass between them, I said, O my son, Allah favored you with one to restore you, and your right had returned to you. Then, O Jinni, I married the herdsman's daughter to him, and she transformed my wife into this gazelle, saying, Her shape is a comely and by no means loathsome. After this, she abode with us night and day and night, till the Almighty took her to himself. When she teaches my son, fared forth to the cities of Hind, even the city of this man who had done to you what had been done. And I also took this gazelle, my cousin, and wandered with her from town to town, seeking tidings of my son, till destiny drove me to this place where I saw the merchant sitting in tears. Such is my tale, quoth the genie. This story is indeed strange, and therefore I grant you the third part of his blood. Thereupon the second old man, who owned the two greyhounds, came up and said, O genie, if I recount to you what befell me from my brothers, these two hounds, and you see that it is a tale even more wondrous and marvelous than what you have heard, will you grant to me also the third of this man's blood? Replied the genie, you hast my word for it. If your adventures be more marvelous and wondrous. Thereupon he thus began the second Shaykh story. Know the Lord of the kings of the Jinn, that these two dogs are my brothers, and I am the third. Now, when our father died and left us a capital of 3,000 gold pieces, I opened a shop with my share, and bought and sold therein. And in like guise did my two brothers, each setting up a shop. But I had been in business no long while before the elder sold his stock for 1,000 dinars, and after buying outfit and merchandise, went his ways to foreign parts. He was absent 1 whole year with the caravan. But one day, as I sat in my shop, behold, a beggar stood before me, asking alms, and I said to him, Allah open you another door. Whereupon he answered, weeping the while, am I so changed that you know me not? Then I looked at him narrowly, and lo, it was my brother. So I rose to him and welcomed him. Then I seated him in my shop and put questions concerning his case. Ask me not, answered he. My wealth is a waste, and my state hath waxed unsteadied. So I took him to the hammam bath and clad him in a suit of my own, and gave him lodging in my house. Moreover, after looking over the accounts of my stock in trade, in the profits of my business, I found that industry had gained me 1,000 dinars, while my principal, the head of my wealth, amounted to 2,000. So I shared the whole with him, saying, assume that you has made no journey abroad, but has remained at home, and be not cast down by your ill luck. He took the share in a great glee, and opened for himself a shop, and matters went on quietly for a few nights and days. But presently, my second brother, yon other dog, also setting his heart upon travel, sold off what goods and stock in trade he had, and albeit we tried to stay him, he would not be stayed. He laid in outfit for the journey, and fared forth with certain wayfarers. After an absence of a whole year, he came back to me, even as my elder brother had come back. And when I said to him, O my brother, did I not dissuade you from travel? He shed tears and cried, O my brother, this be destiny's decree. Here I am, a mere beggar, penniless, and without a shirt to my back. So I led him to the bed O Jinni, and clothing him in new clothes of my own wear. I went with him to my shop and served him with meat and drink. Furthermore, I said to him, O my brother, I am one to cast up my shop accounts at the head of every year, and whatso I shall find of surplusage is between me and you. So I proceeded, O Ifrit, to strike a balance, and finding 2,000 dinars of profit, I returned praises to the Creator and made over one half to my brother, keeping the other to myself. Thereupon he busied himself with opening a shop, and on this wise we abode many days. After a time my brothers began pressing me to travel with them, but I refused, saying, What gained you by travel voyage that I should gain thereby? As I would not give ear to them, we went back each to his own shop, where we bought and sold as before. They kept urging me to travel for a whole 12 months, but I refused to do so till full 6 years were past and gone when I consented with these words. O my brothers, here am I, your companion of travel. Now let me see what monies you have by you. I found, however, that they had not a do having squandered their substance in high diet and drinking and carnal delights. Yet I spoke not a word of reproach. So far from it, I looked over my shop accounts once more, and sold what goods and stock in trade were mine, and finding myself and the owner of 6,000 ducats, I gladly proceeded to divide that sum in halves, saying to my brothers, These 3,000 gold pieces are for me and for you to trade withal, adding, Let us bury the other moiety underground that it may be of service in case any harm befall us, in which case each shall take 1,000 wherewith to open shops. But replied, Right is your reckoning, and I gave to each one his 1,000 gold pieces, keeping the same sum for myself, to wit 1,000 dinars. We then got ready suitable goods and hired a ship, and having embarked our merchandise, proceeded on our voyage the following day, a full month, after which we arrived at a city, where we sold our venture, and for every piece of gold we gained 10. And as we turned again to our voyage, we found on the shore of the sea a maiden clad in worn and ragged gear, and she kissed my hand and said, O my master, is there kindness in you and charity? I can make you a fitting return for them. I answered, Even so, truly in me are benevolence and good works, even though you render me no return. Then she said, Take me to wife, O my master, and carry me to your city, for I have given myself to you, so do me a kindness, and I am of those who be made for good works and charity. I will make you a fitting return to this, and be you not shamed by my condition. When I heard her words, my heart yearned towards her in such sort as will to Allah. be he extolled and exalted, and took her and clothed her and made ready for her a fair resting place in the vessel, and honorably entreated her. So we voyaged on, and my heart became attached to her with exceeding attachment, and I was separated from her neither night nor day, and I paid more regard to her than to my brothers. Then they were estranged from me, waxed jealous of my wealth and the quantity of merchandise I had, and their eyes were opened covetously upon all my property. So they took counsel to murder me and seize my wealth, saying, "Let us slay our brother, and all his monies will be ours." And Satan made this deed seem fair in their sight. So when they found me in privacy, and I sleeping by my wife's side, they took us both up and cast us into the sea. My wife awoke startled from her sleep and forthright becoming an Ifritah. She bore me up and carried me to an island and disappeared for a short time. But she returned in the morning and said, "Here am I, your faithful slave, who had made you due recompense. For I bore you up in the waters and saved you from death by command of the Almighty. Know that I am a Jinniyah, and as I saw you, my heart loved you by will of the Lord. From I am a believer in Allah and in His apostle, whom heavens bless and preserve. Thereupon I came to you, conditioned as you saw me, and you did marry me. And see, now I have saved you from sinking. But I am injured against your brothers, and assuredly I must slay them." When I heard her story, I was surprised and thanking her for all she had done. I said, "But as to slaying my brothers, this must not be." Then I told her the tale of what had come to pass with them from the beginning of our lives to the end, and on hearing it quoth she, "This night will fly as a bird over them, and will sink their ship and slay them." Quoth I, "Allah open you, do not thus. For the proverb said, O you who does good to him that doth evil, leave the evil there to his evil deeds. Moreover, they are still my brothers." But she rejoined, "By Allah, there is no help for it, but I slay them." I humbled myself before her for their pardon, whereupon she bore me up and blew away with me till I last. She set me down on the terrace roof of my own house. I opened the doors and took up what I had hidden in the ground, and after I had saluted the folk, I opened my shop and bought me merchandise. Now, when night came and I went home, and there I saw these two hounds tied up, and when they sighted me, they arose and went and found upon me. But ere I know what happened, my wife said, "These two dogs be your brothers." I answered, "And who hath done this thing by them?" And she rejoined, I sent a message to my sister, and she entreated them on this wise, nor shall these two be released from their present shape till then years shall have passed. And now I have arrived at this place on my way to my wife's sister, that she may deliver them from this condition, after their having endured it for half a score of years. As I was wending onwards, I saw this young man, who acquainted me with what had befallen him. I determined not to fare hence until I should see what might occur between you and him. Such is my tale. Then said the genie, surely this is a strange story, and therefore I give you the third portion of his blood and his crime. Thereupon quoth the third Shaykh, the master of the Marmur, to the genie, I can tell you a tale more wondrous than these two, so you grant me the remainder of his blood and of his offense. And the genie answered, so be it. Then the old man began the third Shaykh's story.